she ignored you. And in that instant, something within you collapsed into silence. Your pride trembled. Your ego bled. And your mind began searching for reasons the heart could never understand. There are wounds not born from the blow, but from the void it leaves behind. Contempt is not noise. It is an absence that screams, a look that never comes, a response that never arrives. And yet somehow it continues to weigh on you like a stone. Indifference is far more lethal than hatred because hatred still recognizes you. Contempt does not. It erases you, turns you into nothing. And the man who does not know how to face nothing eventually loses himself. The game begins when you finally understand that the other silence is a mirror. It reflects how deeply you still depend on being noticed. Machiavelli would say, "He who needs to be loved loses power." Because love when begged for transforms into weakness. The world does not respect the one who humiliates himself for attention. And the heart that begs dethrones itself when she ignores you. It is not she who wounds you. It is you, revealing to yourself how little you have mastered your own value. The first mistake of a man is to react, to send messages, to seek explanations, to try proving he deserves to be heard. But knocking begs for an audience. When the throne is firm, silence is enough. It is in this moment that most men surrender. They confuse need with love and wounded pride with true feeling. Her indifference is a test not of your love, but of your control. Power begins when you can endure not being seen, not being answered, and still remain whole. The man who reacts to indifference exposes dependence. But the one who observes insolence creates mystery. And mystery is where respect is born. When she ignores you, instinct screams, "Do something." But power whispers, "Wait," because time is an invisible battlefield. And the one who acts too early gives away his position. Haste is the poison of the strong. Learn to endure the discomfort of silence because it is within that silence that respect begins to take root. Silence is the disguise of kings. It confuses, disarms, and transforms contempt into uncertainty. When nothing is said, everything is imagined. And what is imagined always holds more power than what is explained. The man who masters silence controls the stage without ever needing to stand upon it. This is the art of governing hearts. It is not about ignoring out of pride, but about understanding the worth of your own echo. If your presence was once a gift, your absence will become a reminder. The woman who once believed she held control will begin to doubt the power she thought she had. And doubt is the seed of return, the first spark of reversal. Machiavelli taught that a prince must appear unshaken even when betrayed. The same law applies to the man facing contempt. He who remains calm governs. He who shows need kneels. Power does not lie in conquering love, but in remaining dignified even as it walks away. So when she ignores you, do not seek explanations. Seek a mirror. See how much of your peace still depends on approval. The pain of rejection is not destruction. It is revelation. A reminder that your value still lives in the eyes of another. And only when that gaze stops defining you will you finally become free. The game of attention is the most subtle of all. It is never won through words, but through absence, because the human mind fears the void, and in its fear, it tries to fill it with meaning. When you disappear, she must decipher you. But when you react, she reads you. Power is never in explaining yourself. It is in becoming indecipherable. The woman who ignores you is not rejecting you. She is measuring you, testing your control, watching to see if your interest is strength or weakness. She observes how long you can endure silence before your composure breaks. And when she realizes she cannot move you, cannot shake you, something inside her begins to crumble, because true dominance is born the moment the other loses control over you. Machiavelli once said, "It is safer to be feared than loved." In the realm of emotion, that fear is not terror. It is respect. The quiet fear of losing something rare, something valuable. The man who remains calm in the face of rejection does not vanish. He becomes a mystery. And mystery is the antechamber of desire. It is the scent of those who hold power. Because mystery is not created. It is maintained through restraint. Reacting is confession. It says, "You dominate me." But silence says, "I choose the moment." Power hides in the pause. A well-placed excellence is a sword wrapped in silk. It cuts without spilling blood. It strikes without being seen. When she realizes that your world continues to turn without her, she will feel the weight of her own absence. Her mind will fill in the blanks and imagination will punish her more than your words ever could. This is not manipulation. It is understanding the human theater. Because everyone wants to be desired, but few know how to control the stage of desire, and the secret is as cruel as it is simple. He who appears to need less always wins. Emotional freedom is the rarest form of luxury. And the one who possesses it turns rejection into fertile ground. While the weak try to prove their worth, the wise embody it insolence. The man who transforms himself after being ignored sends the most powerful message a human can send: "Nothing paralyzes me." That is the kind-off message that requires no words. It is seen in the eyes, in the posture, in the way the body occupies space without seeking permission. Contempt wounds, beauty also teaches. It shows you how much off your peace still depends on validation. It is the cruelest and yet the most honest mirror. And when you finally learn to face that mirror without anger, you uncover something dangerous. Your strength has never come from the love you receive, but from the serenity with which you endure the love you are denied. Machiavelli understood that power was the art of perception. The wise prince does not need to be invincible. He only needs to appear invincible. The same law governs the man who faces contempt. He does not need tobe made of stone. He only needs topir unshakable, because the human mind fears what it cannot define and respects what refuses to be provoked. Strategic indifference is the border between pride and wisdom. Pride shouts, "I do not need you." Wisdom simply shows that true power is never theatrical. It is quiet. It is calm. It walks as if nothing has happened and makes the world question whether anything ever did. When she ignores you, you are not losing something. You are being tested by the universe itself. Silence is the exam of your maturity, and the result is not measured by how much it hurts, but by how much you evolve. Every time you endure emptiness without reacting, your soul expands. The man who masters his impulses masters his destiny. Silence is the slowest poison that exists. At first, she believes she holds the control, that she commands the game. But as time stretches, the echo of your absence begins to disturb her peace. What was once her power becomes doubt, and doubt is always the beginning of loss. A human being can endure contempt, but cannot endure the mystery of someone who does not react. When she ignores you, she seeks control. She wants to feel above you. But when she sees that your world continues unshaken, that your eyes no longer seek, no longer plead, something inside her begins to fracture. Her pride resists, but her curiosity grows. Why did he not react? That single question begins to corrode the one who once believed she possessed you. And here is where many men fall. They witness the power of silence and then they try to use it as a weapon. But true power is never performance. It does not come from strategy alone. It is born from genuine self-sufficiency. Pretending indifference is theater, living peacefully within it is royalty, because what is authentic will always defeat what is calculated. Machiavelli said that uncertainty is the most refined form of domination. Whoever leaves the other in doubt controls the rhythm of the relationship. Silence creates space for imagination, and imagination gives birth to desire. When she begins to fill your silence with her own fantasies, she has already returned. Even if she never admits it, absence carries weight. When it belongs to a man of presence, if your silence is born from emptiness, it is forgetfulness. But if your silence rises from fullness, it becomes dominance. The empty man disappears and is forgotten. The full man grows silent and is remembered. The difference lies in the energy that sustains him, need or self-mastery. And that difference changes everything. A woman who ignores you expects to see you crawl. She expects your reaction, your message, your pursuit. But when none of it comes, her mind begins to turn against itself. She starts to imagine. She wonders if there is another woman, if you lost interest, if you became cold. Each possibility is a blade cutting her pride. And in that process, she begins to feel exactly what she once wanted you to feel. Power changes sides when silence becomes noise. When your name starts echoing in her thoughts for no reason. When your image quietly reappears among her ordinary memories, the man who has learned not to react becomes an invisible presence. He does not chase. And yet he is everywhere in her mind, in her silence, and in the space she can no longer fill. Machiavelli would say, a wise ruler never wastes a betrayal. He studies it. He uses it as Elesh sun. In the same way, a wise man does not regret being ignored. He invents himself. Contempt is a cruel teacher, but it is also a fair one. It reveals what love tries to hide. That true power is born from independence, from needing no audience to feel whole. Freedom begins the moment you stop competing for attention. Silence becomes your ally, not your punishment. It is within silence that the mind strengthens and the eyes begin to see beyond vanity. The man who understands this becomes immune because he no longer seeks to win the game. He simply learns to observe the board. And in that stillness, the game begins to turn. The power that was once in her hands starts to dissolve. The same silence she used against you returns to her as reflection. Now she is the one who feels the emptiness. Now she's the one who looks for signs. The man who understands the nature of time never truly loses. He simply changes his position on the board. The man who learns to endure silence becomes his own ruler. He understands that real control is not in being remembered but in not needing to be. When your worth no longer depends on another's presence, you become a fortress. And no rejection can penetrate the walls of your consciousness. Ignoring someone may be an act of defense. But remaining silent before provocation is an act of mastery. It is the gesture of a man who already knows that true power does not shout. It watches. It studies. It waits, while others react to the heat of emotion. The wise act according to the temperature of strategy. There are those who mistake silence for weakness. But silence is not the absence of response. It is the choosing of ground. The stillness between impulse and reason, the very place where the foolish fall and the wise endure. Machiavelli would call this the art of letting the enemy talk too much. Because the one who speaks endlessly always reveals what they feel. When you are ignored, instinct demands reaction. Pride demands revenge. But the elevated spirit asks for only one thing: distance. Because wherever there is noise, there is manipulation. And wherever there is manipulation, there is a draining of energy. Learning to remain still in the face of chaos is the most elegant form of victory. Winning without fighting. Coldness is not inhumility. It is clarity. It is the precise moment you understand that love does not mean begging for presence. Because true love does not beg. It respects space. It respects time. And it respects the freedom of choice. Only the one who possesses himself can love without losing himself. Only the one who masters his own emotions can walk away without resentment. And in that moment, everything changes. Your energy shifts. What was once neediness becomes magnetism. What was once pain becomes power. The one who once wounded you now unknowingly sets you free. And the most curious truth of all is that when you stop trying to prove your worth, it begins to be felt. Because the world does not respond to your words, it responds to your belief, and it always feels what you have finally decided to come. She notices it, not immediately, but slowly. At first, she cannot name it. Something in the air has changed. Your voice no longer echoes with the same warmth. Your eyes no longer plead, they simply see. And what unsettles her most is not your distance. It is your stability. For the first time, she senses that you no longer need her to exist. That your identity no longer hangs from her approval. Power changes address the moment the heart learns to leave without an answer. When attachment dissolves, clarity begins. Machiavelli would smile here and say, he who learns to lose without destroying himself becomes invincible. Because rejection in its rawest form is purification. It burns away illusion, vanity, and need. Everything that made you fragile. Contempt when understood is not a curse. It is an initiation ritual into self-mastery. It reveals who you are beneath the mask's desire built. It teaches the law of perception that men are never destroyed by what is done to them, but by what they believe it means. And the one who survives rejection with his mind intact is reborn with a quiet strength the world feels but cannot interpret. He acts differently. He no longer performs because the battlefield has moved from the outer world to the inner one. And there he already won. The real victorious never in winning her back. It is in winning yourself back. It is standing before the mirror and finding serenity where anxiety once lived. It is realizing that your peace is worth more than her return. That peace is the true symbol of authority because power does not live in being missed. It lives in not needing to be remembered to exist. That is the silent crown of the sovereign. When a man reaches this point, he becomes dangerous, not because it threatens, but because he no longer fears. He moves with a calm that unsettles. The calm of one who no longer negotiates his worth. He speaks little, but every word lands with consequence. Each movement is deliberate. Each silence louder than the noise of others, and if one day she returns, it will not be out of pity, but out of instinct. Because nature is drawn to balance, and balance is what you now embody. Silence taught her what your presence never could. That emotional restraint is the highest form of influence. The man who learned to wait without despair has discovered the secret of the world. That time bends for the one who does not chase it. No one can stop the one who no longer needs to be stopped. For when the will no longer depends on outcomes, destiny obeys his composure. Silence becomes his throne. Absence becomes his weapon. Stillness becomes his strategy. Every gesture, every look, every step flows from inner balance, the kind born only from pain endured and transcended. Power is not something you impose. It is something that radiates naturally, inevitably, completely. Because the man who has mastered silence no longer plays the game. He is the game. She may try to measure your strength through provocation, through praise, through carefully chosen tests. But the man who masters his own ego remains unshaken. Every attempt to manipulate him becomes proof of his composure. Every emotional trap she sets only exposes the futility of her strategy. For what she once hoped to extract through indifference now collides with a calm, almost disconcerting resistance. There is a strange silence in his presence, a quiet that refuses to bend, a stillness that cannot be provoked. The secret is brutally simple. The mind rules, the heart obeys. It sounds cold, but it isn't a rejection of emotion. It is the discipline of emotion. Machiavelli would call it governance of the inner state. To rule the world, one must first learn to rule his own pulse. While she searches for meaning in your behavior, the wise man offers none. He knows that the moment you explain yourself, you lose the mystery that commands respect. True power lies in perceiving your own light, not in seeking the reflection of it in someone else's eyes. And that light, calm, contained, and sovereign, becomes impossible to ignore. Because people are not drawn to those who chase, they are drawn to those who glow quietly in self-sufficiency. Her return, if it ever happens, is never a goal. It is a consequence, a natural result of your evolution, your serenity, your control over your own urgency. The man who chases her return confesses dependence. The man who lets time breathe turns absence into gravity and frustration into silent admiration. Patience is sharper than anger and more seductive than beauty. It bends time itself. It makes the other question themselves. The man who practices patience builds empires within. Hell learns to stand where others collapse. He turns emotional pain into psychological strength, transforming every scar into silent charisma. He grows stronger through adversity and awakens fascination without movement, without noise, without trying. What once appeared to be weakness reveals itself as strategy. And what once felt like emptiness becomes fertile ground, a space where presence takes root and silent influence quietly blooms. Because power at its highest form does not announce itself. It radiates through restraint. It communicates through composure. In the end, the lesson becomes clear. The game was never about her. It was always about you. About your ability to remain whole when the attention of the world drifts away. Domination over another is temporary, but mastery over oneself eternal. And only those who truly know themselves become unpredictable and therefore irresistible. The man who absorbs rejection and transforms it into growth ascends beyond reach. He does not beg. He does not react. He does not attempt to be seen. His silence speaks louder than 1,000 pleas. Every gesture radiates completeness. Every step declares freedom. Every pause commands attention. And in this stillness, true authority emerges. The authority of existing without needing to be approved, the quiet dominion of a man whose sense of worth comes only from himself. She observes but finds no openings. She senses but provokes no reaction. What was once her power over you has turned into quiet confusion, a subtle, almost unconscious regret. Because now your silence speaks a language she was never prepared to understand. The man who has learned the value of silence and presence now walks as the ruler of himself. Indifferent to the theater of others. Untouched by their applause, unmoved by their absence. He walks through the noise of the world with the composure of one who has already won, and the greatest paradox of power unfolds. The less you try to prove it, the more it begins to show. This is the crown of silence. Invisible but undeniable. It is worn not by those who dominate others but by those who have mastered themselves. And that is where all power begins. Machiavelli would smile at the man who has finally learned not to react because he recognizes the highest form of intelligence to govern oneself when everything tempts you to respond. He understands the ultimate truth that power is not found in conquering but in remaining whole. It is not in controlling another but in never being controlled. The throne is not granted by affection. It is forged in the absence of dependence. Every empire collapses when it begins to need applause. But the inner kingdom, the one built in silence, cannot be touched because no one else built it. Silence becomes his blade. Calm becomes his armor. And time, the most loyal of all allies, works in his favor, polishing his restraint into influence. And so the game ends, not with noise, not with revenge, but with quiet understanding. The man who was once ignored no longer begs. He no longer seeks. He no longer submits. He has walked through fire and learned that distance is not loneliness. It is the geography of dignity. He walks alone, yes, but whole, detached, aware, complete. The absence of the other is no longer pain. It is merely a detail in a larger design, a footnote in a story that is now about himself. For true power does not demand to be seen. Its imply exists. It breathes through composure, through the effortless confidence of a man who no longer performs for attention. Power resides in self-mastery. And those who possess it transform contempt itself into a quiet monument of sovereignty. Every wound becomes wisdom, every silence a sermon, every rejection a form of education. The world watches him and cannot explain why he commands without speaking. But Machiavelli would understand. He would say, this man has understood the architecture of power, that to rule is first to rule one's own reactions. No words, no noise, only presence, only control. Because control is not a performance. It is an atmosphere. It changes how rooms feel when you enter. It makes others adjust their tone without knowing why. In this stillness, the world finally understands. The one who does not react rules all who do. Heralds not through domination, but through balance. He wins not by force, but by absence of need. And as he stands there unmoved, unbothered, you realize something deeper. He was never playing against her or them or anyone. He was playing against himself. And he has won, because the greatest victory a man can achieve is to look into the mirror and no longer see the opponent. This is the endgame. Not of love, not of power, but of illusion. The war between desire and dignity is over. Dignity stands. Silence reigns. And the crown, unseen yet undeniable, rests upon the mind that no longer needs to be crowned. He turns and walks away, not with bitterness, but with the kind of calm that only men who have faced themselves can carry. Behind him, the world remains noisy, reactive, restless. But he moves through it untouched. A storm once, now a still sea. This is where all power ends and where all peace begins.